So what are your priorities as a CIO over the next 12 to 24 months? What are you really hoping to achieve? Can you kind of pull out a few key examples for me?
I think every CIO right now has the same priority, is like, how do you balance keeping everything running and safe and real innovation? So I grew up in a council estate. Many people weren't going to university from the neighbourhood that I grew up in. I think my mum said, but university's for hippies and rich people. Like, why would you do that? I got a job at a bank, but I absolutely hated it. It was an apprenticeship. My parents were so proud, Bank of Scotland, and I had to stamp checks every day, like thousands of them. And I'd get to like 1,500 checks and then I'd forget the number and I'd have to start it all again. It just wasn't my dream of how I would spend my life. So I went to study engineering at Aberdeen University, and I just have really loved it ever since. I think there's something about engineering, there's just never a day that's the same. So I've worked in tech, I've worked in procurement, I've worked on drilling rigs. I've just had such a wonderful career that is fueled by curiosity, that I think is just engineering is just such an amazing part of how the world works. I've just been very fortunate to have stumbled into that career.
I understand at BP you're managing procurement across sort of 30 billions worth of spend. What did you take from that role that you think now perhaps informs your relationship with technology suppliers as a CIO?
I took a lot from that role. One thing about a procurement organization is it's deeply commercial, deeply technical, and deeply about partnering organizations. So I honed quite a lot of my technology skills in procurement because it's really critical to have frictionless supply chains. So that could be right at the front end of using digital auctions rather than paper, types of requests for procurement, RFPs, through to how you process through your system, straight through processing, automation. There was a whole bunch of technology that goes with a supply chain that I found really, really enjoyable, that really helped me when I moved into both the CTO role at BP and BNY. I think the partnership one was the most critical. Back to my early days, you work better in a partnership than you do in a traditional supplier relationship because you understand what your client is trying to do better, and therefore you'll go the extra mile to help them do that. But also, if you know that type of environment you're trying to play into, you can standardize your own products, make your own business better, make your own profitability better. And that's where you get into that real win-win for both organizations. I always say internally, job one for us is cyber and resiliency. And our CEO says resiliency is commercial, which is entirely true, particularly in the financial services sector. So making sure that our systems are cyber secure, that they keep working every day, that they keep working for our clients is always job one. And then how do you innovate around that? So we have developed our AI hub. It's relatively small compared to many of the financial services institutions, but we now have 85% of the bank fully trained on Gen AI. Now, everyone at the bank can have access to an AI assistant, but to harness full Gen AI capabilities, you have to go through training. And that is a real mature organization to have got to that level of training. 8,000 of those people, and bear in mind we're a 50,000 person bank, are building their own agents. Most of them are not engineers. So the power of innovation that's happening at BNY right now, on top of that secure, resilient systems, like walking that line of innovation, resiliency, and cyber is everyone's top priorities.
Can you tell me about how your technology function works vis-a-vis lines of business? Because I know in a lot of organizations, they're not as integrated as people would like them to be. And I've heard your CEO talking about some of the sort of stovepiping that's happened in the past and people running off in different directions, as he put it.
Previously, we had 3 big business functions that could tend to work in a little bit of silos. And now we've organized ourselves around platforms. So if you think about payments is now a horizontal platform there's a leader of the payments function, and their job is to look horizontally across how we do payments at the bank, simplify architectural roadmaps, real heavy engineering content, but really look at these different horizontals. And now we have more than half the bank in the platform's operating model, and we are just seeing tremendous benefits of being organized in this way. Now, I came from a very similar background, which was one of the reasons that drew me to BNY, and I believe that this is a completely differential way of harnessing people's careers, productivity, profitability, and simplification. Now, engineering kind of sits as a matrix on that. So I have an entire engineering organization who matrix into me, but also report directly into the platforms. And again, I think that's a wonderful model if you do it correctly. And how do you get the engineers to rally around a problem in the platforms world, but still report back into the engineering function for their careers, for their developer productivity experience, for the standards by which we operate engineering. And I think that's the real sweet spot. Organize around a problem, but make sure you don't lose control of your standards and career paths by having an overlay of the engineering function.
What's BNY's split broadly between sort of the IT you have in-house and your relationships with outsourcers or big SIs? And is that a split that you're looking to change at all?
We don't have an enormous organization compared to some of the other banks. So we have to be very thoughtful about where our engineering time is spent. That is generally on products that are completely innovative and different in the competitive sphere of banking. It could be something that generates real IP. Almost all of our AI work we do internally with some notable partnerships, our LLM partners and Microsoft and some others. But if something can be done by another person, or you can buy a product off the shelf, then of course we would leverage that technology. That makes a whole bunch of sense.
Most of the CIOs and CTOs we talk to, particularly in the financial services sector, I think everyone's under pressure to innovate with AI and do cool and funky stuff. And most organizations, when they really start to do that, they find that perhaps their data isn't quite in as good shape as they thought it was. Do you have a role there as CIO in making sure that the data estate is kind of optimal? Do you work with a chief data officer, for example? What does that environment look like and how do you fit into it?
I love the whole data story. We could talk about that forever. People have this vision that data will one day be perfect and the world will be great. And that is just, of course, not ever going to be the case, particularly in companies. Even modern tech companies have data issues. We have done a phenomenal job in the last few years. So the data organization sits in my organization. It is one of the platforms that we talked about recently. And just like everything in tech, it's a team sport. So we have a very mature program now where we look at the data that we ingest, we look at how we govern that data, and then we look at how we distribute that data. So a lot of work has been done in that space. On the ingestion side, we have to heavily involve our operations teams and our lines of business team because they are the producers of that data. On the governance side, that's a team sport with risk, with legal, with data privacy officers, because keeping our clients' data safe is always going to be one of our top priorities. And then distributing data so that when we have these 8,000 people, not just engineers, building their own AI agents, they know that they can trust that sense of distributed data becomes really, really important. So yes, this sits in my organization. Yes, it's a key priority for me as a CIO, but as I've described through the whole data chain from how we acquire and input data through how we distribute it to our organization and how most importantly we keep it safe, it's just such a big team sport. Now we can also use technology. AI can have a really important role about cleaning up that data. When we have systems, I'm a very, very big believer in baking in hard controls for data and how we set our technical systems up. And then how we distribute data also becomes a technology challenge. But without everyone understanding and being involved in that progress, this will be a forever unhappy job for organizations to do. So we've made a lot of great progress. We still have ways to go, like any organization, but I'm really proud of what the data leadership team have led at BNY. you.